Our neighborhood was a curated mosaic of perfect lawns and pastel houses, each a carbon copy of the next, save for the occasional deviation in the ubiquitous white picket fences. It was a place where conformity was celebrated, where variation was met with suspicion. A place under the reign of Karen, the self-appointed queen of the homeowners association. From the moment I moved in, my garden was my pride. An explosion of color and texture. Sunflowers nodded in the breeze. Marigolds and lavender intermingled in a fragrant embrace. It was a sanctuary, a riot of nature, amongst the regimented lines of sod. To me, it was a slice of joy, carved from the earth. But to Karen, it was an affront. Too joyful, she declared in one of her crisp letters that arrived in my mailbox, sealed with the oppressive authority of the HOA. A deviation from community standards, she proclaimed, as if happiness were a crime. Her first action was subtle, but incisive. A polite suggestion at a neighborhood gathering that our street might look more harmonious if everyone adhered to the HOA guidelines that conveniently omitted anything beyond a narrow spectrum of green. I stood amidst the nodding heads, feeling the weight of conformity pressing in. Her eyes flicked to mine. A challenge, a dare, I responded quietly, planting another row of daisies. Her next move was less subtle. A formal notice pinned to my door, citing a list of violations: the unapproved colors, the unregulated growth, the unsanctioned happiness spreading from my garden. I read it while sipping my morning tea, feeling the absurdity of it all steep into me. The paper trembled with the force of her disapproval, yet I felt a curious calmness settle over me. I could have conformed, trimmed back the joy, pruned the life until it fit snugly within the confines of the HOA's vision, but I chose to stand my ground, to see beauty where she saw disorder. It was a silent resistance, a quiet defiance in the face of rigidity. In the evenings, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting its golden net over my garden, I would wander through the blooms. Their colors deepened in the twilight, a tapestry woven by nature's hand. Each petal seemed to whisper encouragement, a soft chorus rising with the cricket's song. I thought of the power of small acts, the strength in standing firm against the tide of uniformity. And then the idea took root, sprouting in the fertile soil of my mind. What if this garden, this vibrant testament to life, could offer more than mere resistance? What if it could be a haven for others, a space for healing and reflection amid the rigid lines of suburban expectation? Karen's actions, unwittingly, had planted the seed. It was time to let it grow. I envisioned a community healing space, a sanctuary not just for me, but for anyone drawn to the allure of untamed beauty. A place where joy was not only allowed, but celebrated. The sun rose with a warm embrace, casting soft morning light over my garden's kaleidoscope of colors. The marigolds winked in the early glow, their vibrant yellows defying the conventions of monotony that the HOA seemed to cherish. The day before, I had received an official-looking letter from Karen. She'd marked it with the HOA seal, as if branding her displeasure with bureaucratic authority. The letter was a masterpiece of absurdity. Words like unseemly and unauthorized exuberance danced across the page, describing my garden as a breach of decorum. Impossibly, she accused the sunflowers of being a public menace. A menace, I mused, for standing tall and unapologetic. The irony was delicious. I folded the letter with care, adding it to my collection of absurdities. Karen had escalated. Her tactics became a twisted game. Rules appeared out of nowhere, each more nonsensical than the last. Grass should be kept precisely 2 inches in height, one proclaimed. Another insisted on the use of neutral-toned flowers. Neutral tones, as if my garden should dress in beige and blend into the background of her perfectly manicured, lifeless ideal. Citations came next, delivered with a decisiveness that would have impressed a seasoned detective. A patch of daisies, apparently guilty of excessive cheerfulness, earned me a fine. I could almost hear Karen's satisfaction echoing in the silence of her pristine lawn. Her need for control was becoming theatrical. a one-woman show of authoritarianism. Rumors began to whisper through the neighborhood like a cunning breeze. Karen's voice, a steady stream of gossip, colored me as a rebel defying community standards. She painted me as a meddler, a troublemaker. Yet, as the narratives twisted and turned, I found solace in the murmur of my garden. It stood as a testament to resilience, its blooms defying the constraints of conformity. In the midst of this, I turned inward. What drove Karen to such lengths? Her need to police joy hinted at a deeper dissatisfaction. I imagined her at home, surrounded by symmetry and silence, a world where spontaneity was banished. In her realm, order reigned supreme. Yet perhaps chaos lingered, just beneath the surface. I watched as neighbors stole glances at the garden, curiosity piqued by Karen's tales. The gossip was a double-edged sword for her. It drew them in, compelled by the defiance of it all. I greeted them with a smile, inviting them to see the tapestry of life and color I'd cultivated. Many stayed, some shyly reaching out to touch a petal, others inspired to swap stories about their own small rebellions. In Defiance, I sought allies. I whispered to a few trusted neighbors about my plan. Transforming the garden into a community healing space was a quiet rebellion, one rooted in hope. If Karen wanted to play by the letter of the law, I would too, but with a twist. The garden would become a refuge, a place where rigidity dissolved into the hum of living things. I sought official recognition, a designation that would shield it from arbitrary decrees. And so, the paperwork began, each form a step toward liberation from the absurdity of Karen's game. As I filled out the forms, I felt a quiet power growing within me. I was not just nurturing flowers, but also cultivating resilience. My garden stood as a testament to joy, a reminder that life, in its stubborn persistence, refuses to be anything less than extraordinary. The new sign stood proudly at the entrance to my garden, just beside the path where HOA Karen loved to patrol. Community Healing Space, it read in elegant calligraphy, an official designation that slipped smoothly through the loopholes of HOA regulations. It declared my sanctuary a place for peace and restoration, a balm for weary souls in the heart of suburbia. At first, it was subtle. Neighbors, beginning to tire of Karen's incessant oversight, started to view my garden not as an eyesore, as she claimed, but as a refuge. Hummingbirds flitted through the air, dipping into flowers that burst in a riot of colors under the sun. The gentle gurgle of the fountain whispered serenity amidst the manicured lawns and cookie-cutter houses. People began to notice. I watched from my window as Mrs. Jensen from down the street lingered by the dahlias one afternoon. She seemed drawn, as if the very air around the blooms was lighter, more inviting. Her shoulders dropped, relaxed. I could almost see the burdens of her day dissipate, like mist. She didn't stay long, but she returned the next day, and the next, bringing her young daughter whose laughter mingled with the rustling leaves. There was a current of change, subtle, but undeniable. Karen, of course, noticed. Her eyes, sharp and narrow, seemed to cut through the layers of foliage and mulch. Her lips tightened into a thin line, etched with disapproval, as she marched past the garden each morning. Yet she kept silent, bound by the very rules she so loved to enforce. It was in the weeks that followed that the garden began to breathe with new life. Neighbors, perhaps emboldened by whispers of defiance against Karen's tyranny, started to visit more frequently. They came to sit on the benches nestled among the roses, to read, to chat, or simply to enjoy the tranquility. A quiet camaraderie blossomed, an understanding that needed no words. Still, tension simmered beneath the surface, a storm gathering on the horizon. Karen's frustration was palpable, a heavy presence that lingered at community meetings and lingered like a dark cloud. The garden, no longer simply mine, had become a symbol, an unspoken rebellion against her rigid rule. It stood tall, defiantly beautiful amid her attempts to flatten its exuberance. Some mornings, I would stand on my porch, coffee in hand, and watch the world unfold. The garden was a catalyst, a spark that illuminated the fractures in our community. It was ironic, really. The very thing Karen tried to crush had brought us together, had shown us the colors beyond her grayscale vision. In those quiet hours, I reflected on the power of small acts, how a seed planted in resistance could grow into a beacon of unity. There was strength and joy in the simple exuberance of life flourishing against the odds, and as the garden continued to bloom, I realized there was no turning back. We were changing, evolving, and Karen, for all her efforts, was powerless to stop it. And so, with each passing day, the garden thrived, a testament to resilience, a reminder that joy, once planted, could never truly be contained. In the aftermath of the meeting, where Karen's complaints had met their match, the air felt lighter, as if the universe had taken a collective sigh of relief. My garden, once labeled too joyful by Karen, now stood as a testament to resilience and community spirit, officially declared a community healing space. It was a title that glimmered with irony given the turmoil that had preceded it. The morning sun filtered through the lace curtains of my living room, casting playful shadows that danced over the old wooden floors. I sipped my coffee, its warmth grounding me. Outside, the garden was alive. Bees buzzed in harmonious concert, weaving through the vibrant tapestry of wildflowers. Each bloom seemed to nod in the gentle breeze, acknowledging its newfound purpose. The community had rallied, their visits more frequent now. With each step through the garden gate, they left behind fragments of stress, worries dissipating like dew in the morning sun. Children laughed and chased butterflies, their giggles mingling with the rustle of leaves. Elderly couples strolled hand in hand, sharing stories as old as the earth itself. Each visit was a silent rebellion against the rigidity that Karen had tried to impose, a celebration of joy she could not contain. Karen watched from a distance, a solitary figure behind the veil of her meticulous curtains. Her shadow seemed smaller, her presence diminished in the wake of the garden's growing influence. Once she had wielded power with the sharpness of a blade, slicing through the community with pointed complaints and rigid rules. Now, her authority dulled. She lingered on the periphery, a spectator to the happiness she had tried to prune. I recalled the last meeting where Karen's voice had trembled, her words a brittle shell around a bitter core. The irony was not lost on me. She had sought order through control, yet it was the chaos of color and life that had unified us. Perhaps she realized this too, standing there, a silent sentinel to her own isolation. The garden's transformation was not just in name. It had become a refuge, a kaleidoscope of emotions where people came to find pieces of themselves they hadn't even known were missing. The soil, rich and forgiving, cradled more than just roots. It held our collective hope, our shared desire to nurture something beyond ourselves. I wandered through the garden, my fingers grazing the petals of a sunflower, its face turned confidently towards the sky. Each step was a reminder of the journey, the quiet determination that had brought us here. The path was uneven, much like life, yet each stone, each curve, held beauty in its imperfection. Karen's presence loomed less each day, her complaints fading into the background noise, like the distant hum of traffic. She had become a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of trying to suppress joy, of the futility in fighting against the unstoppable force of community spirit. As the sun set, casting golden hues across the garden, I realized that the victory was not mine alone. It belonged to every soul who had dared to dream of something more, something unrestrained by the confines of one person's vision of perfection. The garden, with its wild blooms and untamed spirit, stood as a testament to the power of collective defiance. In the end, Karen was not defeated by anger or confrontation, but by the quiet, unyielding force of joy, a joy too radiant to be dimmed by rules or regulations, a joy that had taken root and flourished, transforming not just the soil beneath our feet, but the very heart of our community. And in that transformation, Karen found herself sidelined, a mere shadow to the vibrant tapestry of life that continued to grow, unabated and unafraid.